Hi everyone. Today we are going to start with a new lesson, structural organization of animals. We see different types of animals in our day-to-day life. Each and every animal differ in their habitat, structural organization and mode of reproduction. In this lesson, we are going to see an example of an invertebrate, that is leech. We will see the structural morphology and anatomy of leech. Now we'll see the taxonomic position of leech. So it includes phylum, class, order, family, genus. So it belongs to the phylum Annelida, to the class Hirudinaria, order Gnathobdylida, genus Hirudinaria and species Granulosa. So the scientific name of this Indian cattle leech is Hirudinaria granulosa. So based on the genus and the species name, we scientifically call these leech as Hirudinaria granulosa. And since this Hirudinaria granulosa belongs to the phylum Annelida, and annelids are metamerically segmented worms and they have well developed organ system. Now we'll see the habit and habitat. So this Hirudinaria granulosa, that is Indian cattle leech, is a slimy and sluggish animal, and it is found in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Myanmar and Sri Lanka. It lives in fresh water, ponds, lakes, swamp and slow streams, and they are ectoparasites and they feed on the blood of fishes, frog, cattle and human. Ectoparasite, that means it lives externally on another animal but it will not kill that animal. So in other words, it lives outside the body of the host. Okay, and it is sanguivorous in nature. Sanguivorous means blood sucking. So if you see some of the examples of sanguivorous animals other than leeches, vampire bat, flea, bedbug, mosquito, etc. Okay, and these are some of the examples of sanguivorous animals. And leech can suck blood 5 times more than their body weight. And leech do not have ears. They can sense only the vibration through their skin. It may take more than a year for the complete digestion and absorption of full meal. Now we'll see the external morphology of leech. The external morphology includes shape and size, coloration, segmentation, receptors and suckers. Shape and size. The body of a leech is soft, vermiform, elongated and segmented. Vermiform means having the form of a worm. It will look like a worm, and it becomes ribbon shaped when extended and almost cylindrical when contracted. And leeches may grow to a length of 35 centimeter. And the leeches are hermaphrodite. That means both male and female reproductive organs are present in the same animal. Coloration. The dorsal surface of a leech will show olive green and the ventral surface of leech shows orange yellow or orange red in color. Next, segmentation. The segmentation of leech is called as metamerism, and the body of leech is metamerically divided into 33 segments. The segments are arranged one behind the other, and each segment is further superficially subdivided into rings or annuli. That means when you take a segment, that segment will be further subdivided into many structures. So each structure is called as rings or annuli. And a temporary clitellum is formed on segment 9 to 11. Clitellum. Clitellum is a thickened glandular and non-segmented section of the body wall near the head in leech, and that secretes a viscid sac in which the eggs are stored. So this clitellum is an organ which forms a cocoon to protect fertilized eggs called embryo, and once the breeding season is over, this clitellum will be lost. So it is not a permanent organ and it is only a temporary organ. So in the side of this slide, if you see, you can see the segmentation of the leech. So there are totally 33 segments. So both external and internal features are given, followed by the segments in which they are present. So if you take the body segments, totally there are 33 segments, and when you take the anterior sucker, mouth and eyes, it is present from first to the fifth segment, and the posterior sucker is present between 27 to 33 segments. Pharynx is present from 5th to 8th segment, and croup is present between 9th to 18th segment, and stomach is present in the 19th segment, and intestine from 10 to 22nd segment, and rectum from 23 to 26th segment, and anus opens in the 26th segment, and nephridiopore present from 6th to 22nd segment, and male genital aperture in the 10th segment, and female genital aperture in the 11th segment. So these are the segmentations of leech. Receptors. Each segment of leech have number of sensory projections called as receptors. So on the dorsal side, there are 5 pairs of eyes which is present on the first 5 segments. And the receptors, there are 2 types. Number 1 is annular, number 2 is segmental. So annular receptors are located in each annulus. I hope you remember what is annulus. So annulus, the segment, each segment of leech is further subdivided, and those subdivisions are called as rings or annuli. So here the annular receptors are located in each annulus, whereas the segmental receptors are located on the first annulus of each segment. So there are totally 33 segments, and each segment is further subdivided, okay, and that subdivisions are called as annulus or ring. So here in segmental receptors, they are present on the first annulus, whereas in annular receptors, they are located in each annulus. Next, suckers. So the leech has 2 suckers, one anterior sucker and one posterior sucker. The sucker which is located at the anterior end is called as anterior sucker, which is also called as oral sucker. And this lies in the ventral position, and this occupy first 5 segments. Whereas the posterior sucker, if you take, it is formed by the fusion of last 7 segments, and the anterior sucker helps in feeding, whereas both anterior and posterior suckers help in both attachment as well as locomotion. Now we'll see the external aperture. So what are the external apertures and where are they present? So the external apertures includes mouth, anus, nephridiopore, male genital pore and female genital pore. So mouth, it is located in the middle of the anterior sucker. Anus, it is a small aperture that opens on the mid-dorsal side of 26th segment. Nephridiopore. Nephridia is the excretory part where it opened to the exterior by 17 pair of nephridiopore, and they lie ventrally on the last annulus of each segment from 6 to 22. Female genital pore. This female genital pore lies mid-ventrally between second and third annuli of 11th segment. Male genital pore. It is a mid-ventral opening situated between second and third annuli of the 10th segment. So male and female genital pore location is like mid-ventral. But the male genital pore is located in the 10th segment, whereas the female genital pore is located in the 11th segment. So both lies between the second and the third annuli, but male in the 10th segment, whereas the female in the 11th segment. Okay. So this is the picture, okay, showing the aperture, that is external aperture. So here you can see the nephridiopore, male genital aperture, female genital aperture, anus, posterior sucker, anterior sucker, and the anus part. Now we'll see the divisions of the body. The body of leech is divided into 6 regions. They are cephalic region, preclitellar region, clitellar region, middle region, caudal region, posterior sucker. And the cephalic region includes first 5 segments. So the first 5 segments are called cephalic region. 6th, 7th and 8th segments are called preclitellar region. 9, 10 and 11th segments are called clitellar region. 12 to 22 segments are called middle region. 23 to 26 segments are called caudal region. From 27 to 23 it is called posterior sucker. Next, body wall. The body wall of leech includes 5 layers: cuticle, epidermis, dermis, muscular layer and botryoidal tissue. Cuticle. First we'll see cuticle. It is the outermost layer. Second one, epidermis. Epidermis lies below the cuticle. So I think you can see the picture here. Epidermis lies below the cuticle. Third, dermis. Dermis lie below the epidermis and it is formed of connective tissue. Fourth, muscular layer. It is formed of circular and longitudinal muscles. The last one is botryoidal tissue. This botryoidal tissue lies beneath the longitudinal muscles and it fills the entire coelom around the gut. Gut means stomach or belly. Okay. Gut means stomach or belly, whereas coelom, it is a fluid-filled cavity between the body wall and the gut wall. Next, we'll see about locomotion. If you take locomotion in leech, it takes place by 2 methods. Number 1, looping or crawling movement. Number 2, swimming movement. So looping or crawling movement. Initially, it is performed by muscles and suckers. Okay, leeches attaches its posterior sucker tightly onto the substratum. So during this, contraction of circular muscles and relaxation of longitudinal muscles takes place, so that interior part of the body is extended forward as far as possible. Then the leech attains its anterior sucker. So now the relaxation of circular muscles and contraction of longitudinal muscles takes place. So the posterior sucker forms as a hold and shortens the body. So as the posterior sucker is close to the anterior sucker, the body is raised up in the middle, forming a loop. So the entire process is repeated, and this type of movement is called as looping or crawling movement. So the diagram will explain all that. Whatever I told you, you can correlate with the diagram. Okay, next. The second type of locomotion is swimming movement. So the leech swims very aggressively and actively in water. During swimming, the body becomes dorsal ventrally flattened and perform successive undulating movement. So looping and crawling takes place by contraction and relaxation of muscles. So both circular and longitudinal muscles play a major role. Plus the anterior and posterior sucker also plays a major role in looping or crawling movement. Whereas the swimming movement takes place by undulating movement. Next, digestive system. So the digestive system includes the long alimentary canal and digestive gland. So here we'll see the alimentary canal in detail. So the alimentary canal of leech is a straight tube running from mouth to the anus, and mouth is a triradiate aperture situated in the middle of the anterior sucker, and that leads to the small buccal cavity. So here I have given the picture of triradiate aperture, the picture of mouth, and it shows the triradiate aperture. Okay, and this mouth leads into a small buccal cavity. So the wall of the buccal cavity contains 3 jaws with a single row of minute teeth. So the buccal cavity, when you open your mouth, the space that you have inside your mouth is called as buccal cavity. So that buccal cavity will contain 3 jaws with single row of minute teeth. And the jaws are provided with the structures called papillae. And mouth and buccal cavity occupy the first 5 segments. Then the buccal cavity leads into a muscular pharynx, and this is surrounded by many salivary glands, and the secretion of this saliva contain a substance called hirudin. So this prevents the coagulation of blood, and the pharynx leads into the next part called as croup through a short narrow esophagus, and this croup is the largest portion of the alimentary canal. It's the largest portion of the alimentary canal, and it is divided into a series of 10 chambers, and each chamber communicate with one another through circular aperture surrounded by sphincters. So each chamber consists of a small anterior part and a broad posterior part containing a pair of laterally backwardly directed blind outgrowth called as ceca or diverticula. The crop chambers and the ceca gradually increases in size towards the posterior side, and the crop and its diverticula can store large amount of blood which can be slowly digested. The last chamber of the crop opens into the stomach. The stomach leads into intestine, which is a small straight tube that opens into rectum. The rectum opens into the exterior by the anus. So here you can see the picture of the digestive system where the jaws, first it begins with jaw. That means the jaw is present inside the mouth. Okay, mouth, then that leads to the buccal cavity. So inside the buccal cavity this jaw is present, then that leads to the next opening called as pharynx, and that opening leads to another small opening called as esophagus, and that esophagus leads into the crop, and the crop contain many diverticula or cecae, and that leads into the stomach, and stomach leads into the intestine, and intestine leads into the rectum, and at last the rectum leads into the anus. So these are the entire parts of the alimentary canal. I repeat, where it begins with the mouth, that leads to buccal cavity, which in turn leads to pharynx. Pharynx leads to esophagus. Esophagus leads to crop, and crop leads to diverticular cecae, which in turn leads to stomach. Stomach leads to intestine. Intestine leads to rectum, and rectum leads to anus. Now, at last, we'll see about the feeding and digestion. So, leeches have one of the slowest moving digestive system. The leech feeds by sucking the blood of other animals. During that time, they attach themselves to the host by posterior sucker. Then the blood is sucked through the mouth by making a triradiate or Y-shaped incision in the skin of the host. The blood then enters the mouth of the leech and it travels to the pharynx, from where it slips right through the crop. The crop simply acts as a storage place for the blood. Now, one animal can hold up to 5 times its body mass of the blood in the crop. When the blood is being stored, leeches creates an anticoagulant, that is hirudin. So this hirudin stops the blood from clotting. Suppose if any blood is sucked by the leech from the host, once it is taken into the mouth of the leech, it should not undergo clotting. Suppose if the blood clots, then that will not serve as a food for the leech. So once the blood is sucked from the host, once it enters into the leech, it should not undergo clotting. So to avoid that clotting, by nature itself, inside the saliva of the leech, it contains an anticoagulant substance, and that is called as hirudin. So this will stop the blood from clotting, and also it acts as an anesthetic substances that prevents the host from feeling their bite. Even when any leech sucks the blood, until it sucks the blood to its full crop where it can store the blood, the host cannot feel that. So once the process gets over, only after that time the host will realize that something has been sucked from the body, or we can feel the pain. Okay, until then the pain will not be, we cannot feel the pain. So that is the nature of this hirudin substances, where it acts as an anesthetic substances so that it can prevent the host from feeling their about their bite. Okay, so when the blood moves from the stomach, it is smoothened out even more, and whatever the leech needs for survival. So from this stomach, okay, the leech will pass all the substances to the next part, that is the intestine. So the digested blood is then slowly absorbed by the intestine, and the undigested food is stored in the rectum and it is ejected through the anus. So based on this, the digestion process will takes place. So by this, I'll complete my introduction of this leech today. So I'll meet you in the next session. Until then, have a great day. Thank you.